Hello, my beautiful people. How are you? It's up. I just want you guys to be able to tell me if you are able to hear me because I am not sure if appropriately. As you are preparing to come on, I just want you guys to know in the audience we are continuing with the book Countering the Black Boys, written by Dr. Jawanza Kunjufu. He is an awesome Black scholar, and today we're in chapter 2. So, in chapter 2, we are going to be exploring the years from infancy to 9 years old as it relates to our Black boys. So, when you come on, just say hi to me. Let me know if you're able to hear me, and I will continue. I just want to make sure that you guys can hear me. Is being let me know. How is everyone doing? Let me know what area you are checking in from and how you guys are all doing today. Make sure you share the video. I am now as just waiting for it to come up on my page, and I'm going to share the video. So be so kind to share the video with the audience because I think that we all can learn a lesson or two or three from Dr. Kunjufu as it relates to restoring our Black boys to their original greatness, which is very important for us to do and very important for us to focus on every day. So here I am. I just shared the video. Let's get going, guys. Let me know where you're checking in from, and if you can hear me, I would appreciate it. So Dr. Kunjufu, in this chapter 2, starts off by talking about the research as it relates to Black children in their infant stages and the amount of things they're able to do before other children who are not of the African descent. So he says there are numerous studies that have been done around the world contrasting and comparing what children are able to do at certain stages. Now, this is important because many of us are parents of Black children, and I don't know about you guys, but for me, oftentimes when my children were young, people would be so surprised how they were able to hold up their heads. Or my daughter started walking at 8 months, and she was really walking at 8 months. And people were just so surprised that she was walking at 8 months. Or my children started reading really early. We're very surprised at that. So what he is talking about, hey Charles, you're coming in from San Leandro, California. Yes, awesome. And that's Brian from Philly. That's awesome. I see Natalie's on and Nate is on. How you guys doing? Guys for joining in. What I'm talking about, guys who are just joining in, is how Dr. Kunjufu did a study, or not, he didn't do a study, but he's speaking of the studies that have been out there that shows how children develop differently at different stages in their life. So we're going to be talking about some of those stages our Black boys and girls can do from the moment they come out the womb. He says one such study done by several doctors compared African and American children and their abilities to recognize and respond to stimuli. The first thing he talked about was with the body drawn up into a sitting position, able to prevent the head from falling over backwards. African children were able to do this at 9 hours. European children, it took weeks. With the head of the baby. Now, y'all know when babies are first born, they're not able to hold their heads up. It's very weak. They have to build up the muscle in their neck. And it was saying with the head held firmly, they were able to look at the face of the examiner. African children, at 2 days, they was able to recognize the face of the person who was looking at them at 2 days. European children took 8 weeks. This is a study. You can look up the study for yourself if you do not believe it. Able to support their body in a sitting position and watch reflection in the mirror. Watch their reflection in the mirror. African children at 7 weeks. European children, 20 weeks. I remember one time, good evening, Earl, how are you? I remember one time I took my daughter, doctor, and I said to him, she notices who I am. She was almost like 2 months at that time. I said, she notices who I am. He said, impossible. They're not able to recognize faces until they're about 20 weeks old. My daughter knew who she was. So basically, why he's going over this study is because he's saying that when our children are born, they are already born ahead of the game when it comes to their intelligence, when it comes to their strength. They are already born ahead of the game. He says these studies are very significant because if we really want to measure natural and raw intelligence, this would be the best time to do it in their infancy, between infancy and 3 years of age. From that point on, we're really measuring what children have been exposed to, not intelligence. So he's saying when we really want to measure the intelligence of our children, the best time to do it is from infancy, from birth until 3 years of age. From birth to 3 years of age. When I was a child protection service worker, and thank God I quit that job, Lord, working in the system, potentially having to remove children from their homes for simply being poor, went against my core values. I am so glad I resigned from that job. But nonetheless, the reason why I'm saying that is because I remember seeing children, 2 years old, Black children, having the most intelligent conversations with adults. And oftentimes, my white coworkers, my white supervisors were surprised. They couldn't even fathom how the child can intellectually have a conversation with an adult and be able to understand what was being said, as opposed to having the adult dumb down their language to talk to the child. So that's between the ages of birth and 3 years old. Psychologists says that a child's personality is formed by the time they are 4 years old. So the brain is undergoing some massive development. And at that time, a child is learning a lot. Now, when it comes to our children, they learn rather fast. And this is just not my belief. You can look this up and research for yourself. Our children during that age, from birth to 3 years old, learn rather fast. They pick up. Many of us don't speak to our children like they're babies. We speak to our children just like this. Pick it up. Go sit down. Put that back on the table. Go throw that in the garbage. We don't say, Jonathan, come here, baby. Pick it up. Pick it up. Oh my gosh. We don't talk like that to us. We like, come on, get it together. We ain't got time. We ain't got time. Right? So what he's saying is from birth to 3 years old, that is the true time to measure raw intelligence. It becomes discouraging that our children at a very young age have demonstrated a tremendous amount of intelligence only to be placed last on high school cultural tests. That's where I hit you with the one. See, we see these children from birth to 3 years old, highly intelligent. But by the time that same child, that was able to put puzzles together at 2 years old. I don't know about y'all, but my babies were able to do puzzles at 2 years old. That child that was able to put puzzles together. That child that was able to memorize a storybook from beginning to end and read it back to you. I don't know about y'all, but my child, and y'all saw the video of my baby, he's reading regular books. And he made 4 in September, regular books. So what is hurtful to my heart is that by the time our children are entering in middle school and high school, they are oftentimes showing up as last. How does one at that age appear so intelligent, shows up as last by the time they get to middle school and high school? How? Because after 3 years old, it's no longer raw intelligence that we're dealing with. After 3 years old, like he said, it is a matter of what a child has been exposed 2. After 3 years old, let me say that again. After 3 years old of age is no longer a matter of raw intelligence. It is a matter of what the child is exposed to. Now, let's put that into perspective. Our children, many of our children, not all, are victims of geographic segregation. Geographic segregation. And what I mean by that is many of our children are subjected to the school in which they live in. So if they live in a community that lacks resources, if they live in a community that lacks economic resources, school resources, community resources, after school resources, you name it, if they live in a poor, starving community, they're not being exposed to what they need to be exposed to in order for their intelligence to continue on its path. You see, I remember when I got divorced from my first husband. I only been married twice, y'all, and I'm not planning on getting divorced. But I remember when I got divorced from my first husband. And oftentimes when people get divorced, their children, oftentimes not all, are normally subjected to a life of poverty. But I remember I had 2 children at that time. The first thing I said to myself is, I will not allow their quality of life to diminish. And if I have to sacrifice my comfort and sacrifice my happiness, I got to make sure they make it. So I had chose to move from Teaneck, New Jersey. And I was living in the Jewish section of Teaneck, New Jersey. And if you're familiar with New Jersey, let alone Teaneck, you would know that Teaneck is segregated as well. So if you go to a certain area of Teaneck, even though the children in Teaneck do better than the children in Jersey City, Patterson, Newark, Irvington, Orange, they do better than those children. But the point is, Teaneck is a segregated town. And we were living in a community where we was able to sell our houses $500,000 easily. No problem in that community. And when I got divorced, I no longer had the 2 incomes. But I said I refuse. I refuse for my children to suffer. So I made a conscious decision as a divorced mother of 2 children to move to Fort Lee, New Jersey. Because at the time I moved to Fort Lee, New Jersey, their school district was a blue ribbon school district. That means their children were performing at successful rates. They were getting into colleges. They were mastering math, English, language. They had music in their school. They were doing everything that schools and poorer communities weren't doing. And it was just me. And at the time I moved here, I mean, now rent here is like $3,000 easy. I don't know how we do it. But when I first moved in, rent was $1,600. That's me. And I sacrificed a lot. I worked a lot simply for my children's education. And it paid off tremendously. Tremendously. Paid off. So after 3 years old is not a matter of raw intelligence. See, what we do with our children from 0 to 3 matters. And that's why I get disgusted when I see my people cursing at their kids, yelling at their kids, raising their voice as though they can't speak to their children in respectable tones. I get pissed off. And sometimes I even say stuff. I say things to the parents because a lot of parents with good intentions do not know what they're doing to that child from 0 to 3 years old, especially when you tell the child to shut the up, be quiet, you dumb ASS. Why would you say that to a child? You tell that child from 0 to 3 years old that they're dumb, shut the F up, children are to be seen and not heard. You speak to them like that. And then after 3 years old, it's no longer a matter of raw intelligence. It's a matter of what they are exposed to. And you have already told them that they were dumb. You already told them that nobody was listening to them. Sit their monkey ASS's down. That's how some people talk to their kids. So what do you think happens to their mind when they're exposed to garbage, especially from their parents? Especially from their parents. So they have a garbage school district and they have garbage parents and they live in a garbage community. So we're just reinforcing, whether it's verbally or non-verbally, that they're not good enough. That they're not good enough. And that's why I say that we, whether we are aware of it or not, whether we like what I'm about to say or not, have become co-conspirators with this system of white supremacy. In dissecting the first stage of growth and development in Black males from infancy to 9 years of age, there are two major components I want to analyze. One is the dichotomy. Remember what I said about dichotomy, either or. One is the dichotomy between fine motor and gross motor development. And the second is the issue of hyperactivity. Fine motor and gross motor. Fine motor. And I know you guys are intelligent, and you know it, but sometimes I got younger people listening and they want to learn, so I have to take my time to be able to break down things that people might not be able to recall easily, right? So fine motor is when you will take, let's say, for example, your child who is, let's say, 8 months, 9 months, 9 months old, and you put them at a table with some Cheerios, and you see if they can pinch the Cheerios and pick them up with their 2 fingers. They should be able to do that by a certain age. That is fine motor skills. When they get to kindergarten, they're judged on how they hold a pencil, a crayon, a pen, and their ability to write letters, write numbers, spell their name. That's fine motor skills. Gross motor skills is when they're able to run and jump and throw a ball and roll a ball and catch a ball. That's gross motor skills. So he's saying there's a dichotomy that's happening here. They're being evaluated on their fine and gross motor skills and their hyperactivity. I'm going to make that connection for you guys right now. Comparing males and females in fine motor and gross motor development, the female body on the average is 23% muscle. 23% muscle. Do the math, that's 77% fat, the female body. Hence, ladies, now you know why we get our little kangaroo pouches. And you better do them crunches, baby, or go get an operation. But we are born with 23% muscle in comparison to the male body, which is 40% muscle. Right or wrong, schools value fine motor development more than gross motor development. Well, what's the difference? What does that mean? Female children are able to grasp fine motor skills easier than gross motor skills, because gross motor skills take a certain amount of muscles to run and jump, right? So females are able to sit down, hold a pencil and color, do puzzles, pick up Cheerios, listen without moving around, because the way they are naturally, biologically created. Boys are created differently. The first step in achieving this is not to compare boys to girls and assume that boys are deficient. Somehow, we have the general sentiment that boys and girls are different, yet we have not allowed for those differences in the home and in the classroom, so that boys and girls can develop according to their own unique abilities. What am I saying? What am I saying to you guys? That's knowing that information. That's knowing that boys naturally are born with more muscle than girls. That's knowing that boys are rambunctious naturally. Naturally. They're bouncing off the walls. They're loud. They're obnoxious. They're climbing things. They have less fear over heights and all that other stuff. Just naturally, they are born that way. But yet, when we send them to school, I'm about to preach to y'all. Father, I'm about to put this book down. People don't get it. People don't get it. When I'm getting hot, man. Look, because I'm getting mad. I'm getting mad because we setting our children up for failure. We're setting them up for failure. We got to stop doing this, man. When we send them to school, where majority of the teachers are female. Come on now. Come on now. You don't believe me? Look at the stats. Do the research. I'm not giving you lies. It's against my code of ethics to give you a lie. Majority of the teachers are female, coming from a female perspective without understanding of the male species. They are expecting our young boys to sit still like the girls, to be able to have the same type of writing skills and abilities like the girls, to be able to to color within the line like the girls, to be able to pay attention and listen without talking or having to get up or fidgeting with their pencil or their pen like the girls. They are not the same thing. And the school system has not adjusted their classrooms. The school system has not adjusted their way of teaching when it comes to boys and girls. The school system has not adjusted their hiring practices when it comes to the female teachers versus or in ratio to the male teachers. The school system has not adjusted black male teachers in ratio to the black male students. Come on now. It becomes imperative that schools acknowledge that males and females mature at different rates. Research indicates that girls mature about 2 years ahead of boys. Unless schools are willing to make some adjustments in evaluating and labeling children, let me say that again. Unless schools are willing to make adjustments and evaluating and labeling, i.e. ADHD, i.e. learning disability, i.e. behavioral disability, and we know those disabilities are assigned to the male child more than a female child, and it doesn't take into account that they mature differently. We are co-conspirators with this system that is set out to destroy our boys. Okay? Unless the schools are willing to make some adjustments in evaluating and labeling children, then the only alternative is for parents. Now I'm putting the responsibility on parents to accept female expectations for their male children. The only alternative, what is he saying? Since the school hasn't made adjustments, and the schools are more often sending bad reports on their male children, right? So you're a mom, you're a dad, and you're always being told that little Johnny, little Ray Kwan, little Michael is not keeping still, is moving around too much, is talking out loud, has difficulty writing his letters, whatever the case is, cannot color into the line. I'm concerned about his ability to hold a pencil. All these reports that you're getting home, the only alternative that it does is to make the parent start to hold expectations to their sons that are consistent with the expectations of daughters. Right? That out. Maria Montessori, a medical doctor, she says we should design homes and classrooms to allow for those differences, to encourage children to expose themselves in ways that are comfortable. We should allow in our classroom and our homes an environment that encourages children to expose themselves in ways that are comfortable. Let them learn how they need to learn. Unfortunately, classification dominates. Even though this book was written in the 80s, let me speed that up. Unfortunately, IEPs dominate. Unfortunately, labeling dominates. As a result, a high number of male children are labeled hyperactive and dyslexic. Hyperactive and dyslexic. Then they are placed in remedial reading classes and ultimately special education. All because somebody is choosing to ignore the research. All because somebody is choosing to ignore the science. All because somebody is not reading their research journal articles. So why? Why are they ignoring this despite the fact it has been proven? Why? The second area that I want to look at is hyperactivity. Hyperactivity. Oh man, how many of us children have been labeled ADHD? How many? Hyperactivity. The energy level of African American children is referred to by some psychologists as verve. R. Look that up, guys. Look it up. VERVE. I tell my male clinicians at my office, male children, especially my clinician that specializes in acting out behaviors and ADHD and stuff like that. I told him to educate the parents to remove that stigma, that labeling of hyperactivity. Remove it. Remove it and replace it with verb. Okay? And educate them. Educate them on it. Because we're not going to keep labeling our black boys. Because then they start to take that on as a persona. They start to believe that they cannot rise higher than a labeling of a hyperactivity. No, baby. We are not about to do that. The word hyperactive is a value judgment. It is a value judgment. The word is based on an assumption that we have an understanding and knowledge of what normal activity represents. These children, these young black boys, are not hyperactive. They are born with 40% muscle in comparison to females who are born with 23% muscle. They are not hyperactive. See, labeling somebody as hyperactive puts them in a box. It says this is not a child of potential. This is not a child of intelligence. This is a child who is hyperactive and has a learning disability, a behavioral disability. This is a child who cannot learn like everybody else. So therefore, we need that child out of this classroom. In a classroom setting, the routine and structure favors the timing patterns of girls far more than boys. Imposing these unnatural temporal constraints on young boys can disrupt their normal rhythms, producing frustration and tension. The African American home is filled with a great number of stimuli. Let me stop right there because I'm about to finish for the night. I'm about to be done. The African American home is filled with. You see, yesterday I said to you guys, I noticed that I've done 90% of the stuff right and 10% wrong. And sometimes it's just the 10% you need to adjust that will make the real difference and not the 90%. In my house tends to be boring. Okay, maybe that's why my kids were able to read at such a young age. Maybe that's why my son, like I said to you guys, who's 13, the youngest in his school, and one of the smartest in his class. Geometry honors is just one of them. All his classes are honors. Every last class honors, even his biology. But my point is, maybe because I kept low stimuli in my house. I shared with you guys months ago that I never had TV in my house until I got married to my husband. That wasn't in my house. If I'm lying, I'm flying. There's people on here that know me personally. No TV in my house. We took trips to the library every week. Every week. You had to get enough books to read for the week. Because on the weekend, we was going back to the library for more books. That's how we spent our time. We took trips, road trips, so they can learn about the world, so we could pick up different rocks, so we can compare what are the different minerals in the earth and find them and so they can feel it and examine it. That is how I raised my children. Right? But we know that in many African American homes, there is a lot of stimuli. There is TV. There is music. There are loud conversations. Not in every home, but I'm saying in a lot of our homes. When you live in an urban community, you got the car radio outside bumping. You got your neighbor upstairs playing music. The other one downstairs playing rap music. It's crazy. It's crazy. Right? It's crazy. People are up at 11 o'clock at night when they should be in bed by 9 o'clock p.m. It's crazy. So they have a lot of stimuli in the house. So our children have become accustomed of doing their homework with noise around them, of reading their book with noise around them. But we don't realize that that environment hurts them when they go to school, because the teacher is not going to pump Jay-Z. The teacher is not going to have a TV going really loud. Some of our children, because they have so much stimuli in their house, they're not able to read without noise on. I know people like this in their adult age. They say, I can't function unless there's a TV in the background. Whereas if I hear a TV, I go crazy. If I'm sitting down and I hear commercial, I oftentimes either fast forward if I can, or I'll put it on mute. That's why we watch TV. Too much stimulus for me. I can't take it. There's no wonder why I'm a lifelong. There's no wonder why y'all been on book club with me forever. How many books do I read? I fly through them. Read the books. Because this is my solace. This is my peace. Children, the same thing. I give my son, 13 years old, this book. I'm starting it with him too. And then we have critical conversations about it. Why? Not only because I want him to learn about him, but because I want to keep his mind in a critical state. Because our children are at a disadvantage. They're not learning how to think critically. They're not prepared to debate intelligently. Got to set our children up for success. Schools need to understand that children with higher energy levels are not hyperactive. They simply have a higher verve. The level of intelligence demonstrated by African American children during infancy confirms that innate talent exists. From 0 to 3 years old, our children ain't no joke. So that is proof that they are born with a natural talent. They are born with raw intelligence. But then after that age, how we manage our homes, how we structure and discipline our children in our homes, it hurts their intelligence. And that's why I am constantly saying that we are unaware that we have become co-conspirators to destroy our Black. We also recommend that African American homes reduce the music. Many teachers have indicated that there is simply no quiet time at home, and their classroom is not going to teach reading with Jay-Z, Nas, Little Kim, and 50 Cent playing in the background. So, guys, we're going to stop right there for tonight. Maybe I'll just read this last paragraph and stop for tonight. The last paragraph, I'm going to give you guys some tips just tonight. It says parents need to institute quiet time, where children are expected to sit still for. The other day, which I believe was Sunday night, I had supervision with one of my staff members at my organization. For you guys who don't know who I am, I'm Shonna Etienne. I am the founder of the Center for Counseling and Holistic Services, where I have 8 clinical staff members who work with me, specialize in different areas. I specialize in relationship experts, trained in couples and marriage therapy. I have one of my clinicians that specializes in behavioral disabilities, including ADHD. We're going to remove that H. And I've been supervising him based on an Afrocentric perspective, because most of the boys that come into our organization with these disabilities are African American. And like I said to him, is I need you to implement with your parents a treatment plan that puts them in a position to institute quiet time. And so many of us have become accustomed with timeouts and quiet time to indicate a punishment. We must change that way of thinking. A quiet time does not mean punishment. No way. We have to start changing what has been fed to us by the dominant society that is not appropriate for our children. We have to institute quiet time when we take all the noise down, whatever it, I don't care how old your kids are. I will go into the room and tell my teens, okay, turn it down, read a book. Us. When my daughter got into, let's say, 10th grade, I would have to ask my husband, when she got into 10th grade, she used to take quiet times for herself. Now she goes to Columbia University and she still gives herself quiet time. She starts to feel when she's overstimulated. Starts to get freaked out when she's overstimulated. Same with me. My staff knows when I come in and they see and I say, you guys, give me 5 minutes. Just don't bother me. They already know that I'm overstimulated. I can't take too much. Once I'm overstimulated, I'm a wreck. I'm not cool to be around. I'm not listening to you. I'm forgetting things. I'm giving you facial expressions because it's too much for me to handle. Quiet time. Parents must institute quiet time, where children are expected to sit still for a few minutes. As they become older, teachers have a greater expectations on the number of minutes that children can sit still. Playing games such as concentration and Simon Says enhances listening skills and following directions, which teachers say are most problematic amongst African American boys. So when I read that in Dr. Kunjufu's book, when I read that, I started to implement Simon Says with my youngest child. Of course, I'm not going to play Simon Says with my 13-year-old, but with my 4-year-old, I started to do that because I noticed he all over the place because his verve, right? He's high energy, all over the place. And what I would say to him is, we're going to play Simon Says. And I started to do this with him daily so that he can get accustomed to listening and be able to slow down his impulses. And we have to do this with our children young. So by the time they get into school, teachers are not losing their patience because most of the teachers are female. And they're not even understanding. Hell, half of these teachers don't even have a man in their house. And I'm not being funny, and I'm not throwing shade. But they haven't even been around a man long enough to even see that they're different. You could tell a man to go into the cabinet and get the salt, and the salt is right in front of his face and he won't see it. He can't focus like that. I'm telling you, I do a lot of work with my couples. He can't focus like that. You gotta be very specific. Go to the third shelf. 3 drawers to the right. There you'll find the salt because he's going to follow those directions to the T. And if he follows your directions to the T and your directions is off, he ain't going to find it because he ain't going to look for himself. Now, I'm not saying that's all men, but that's most. That's most. So we have to start implementing strategies in our home that prepares our children, our black boys, to be able to adjust in school. Because as of right now, the public schools are not going to adjust to your black behind child. I'm telling you that right now. And this is not to say that white boys don't get it too. They do. And my concern for this podcast is addressed to African American boys. All my white listeners, write down what you can implement in your homes as well. Because it relates to boys. But I was specifically to my African. I love you guys. Be sure to tune in tomorrow because we are going to finish up with chapter 2 and it's going to get deeper. It's going to get deeper. Let me tell you, this author is no joke. This should become your Bible for your black boys. Okay? Countering the conspiracy to destroy black boys by Dr. Jawanza. Get the book. See you tomorrow, 9 o'clock p.m. on the Virtual Book Club with your girl, Shonna.